Well, freedom, justice, equality, these are the core essence of America. It's the core essence of who we are as a people, and it's what the people of Cuba are fighting for right now. Our next guest, that struggle, a personal matter for her, Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Florida, Jeanette Nunez. Thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, you know the state of Cuba far too well. Your father fled Cuba in the aftermath of Castro coming to power. How are you feeling in this moment, seeing the resurgence of those people after 62 years of oppression and the solidarity that we've witnessed in the streets of your state?
Well, Joe, as you can imagine, it's been an emotional week seeing what's occurring on the island, the Cuban people finally rising up against the tyrannical regime that has had its grip on the Cuban people for far too long. My father, as you mentioned, fled tyranny and oppression in search of opportunity, in search of freedom. And so I often think over the last couple of days, what would he be thinking at this point in time? But I can assure you, he and so many others like him, whose dreams were torn apart, families torn apart, opportunity to live in your homeland removed once and for all. I think he would be thinking that we need to act. The Biden administration needs to finally say something, do something, and stand on the side of freedom, because it is what they need, it is what they desire, it is what they're demanding. And I think that this is an opportunity for the United States to stand firmly on the side of freedom.
Absolutely. Talk about your personal story. You're the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Florida, made possible by the exceptionalism, the love, and the opportunity made possible by the United States of America. Meanwhile, we have the DHS Secretary, Alexander Mayorkas, who said that Cubans should not try to come to this country via a boat. How is it that the same people who have an open sesame policy on our southern border, the same people who spent the last year talking about the Statue of Liberty, give us our huddled masses, trying to castigate Republicans as not loving freedom and not loving brown people, suddenly believe that somehow Cubans should not have the right to come to the home of the free and the land of the brave?
Well, I think it certainly highlights the hypocrisy of the administration, how it has open borders, come one, come all, for those on the southern border, but for this border, which is 90 miles from Florida, a lot closer than in some cases, some cities in Florida, you see that they don't want those individuals. But I believe that what we're seeing is people are finally opening their eyes. They're educating themselves to the tyranny of the Castro regime, the puppet Diaz-Canel, what he has done, brutalizing his people. And certainly, I think it's making individuals that perhaps weren't paying attention to Cuba. We know Biden said it wasn't a priority at the onset of his administration. Perhaps those people are now starting to understand the plight of the Cuban people. And so I think it's a dangerous image for them to see, which is why I think they've yet failed to act on the issue of internet access for the Cuban people.
Absolutely. Now I want to pivot, obviously, to matters directly affecting your home state. We all know the unfortunate aftermath and that building collapse in Surfside. There's a new report came out in the Wall Street Journal, the paper, saying that 2/3 of all of Florida's buildings are more than 30 years old. What do you think needs to be done to ensure that we don't have a catastrophe like we saw in Surfside ever again? What is the galvanizing of whether it's private sector, government, coming together to make sure that we can keep people safe in their own homes?
Yeah, it's been a terrible tragedy, what we've seen unfold in Surfside. And obviously our hearts go out to those that are continuing to suffer, both those that have lost loved ones as well as those that have been displaced. What I'll tell you is obviously buildings that are aged, I don't think it's necessarily the age of the building that is concerning. As we know, there are cities all across America whose buildings age are much greater than 30, 40 years. But what I think what we need to do, and what I think is very difficult, especially for elected officials that with this terrible tragedy want to act, want to do something. I think we need to first understand what caused that building to collapse. This is not something that has happened in our country. This is not something anyone expected to happen. So rather than rush to change, I think we really need to understand what truly impacted that building, what truly caused that building to collapse, and then take measures if needed to address the situation. Was it related to shoddy construction? Was it related to the location, the age of the building? All of those factors, I can assure you, we are actively pursuing every aspect of the investigation, because if it is not a widespread circumstance, obviously we need to address that particular circumstance. But again, I think it's important we understand before we act.
Absolutely. Florida Lieutenant Governor Jeanette Nunez, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time. We look forward to talking to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.